within a lot of hard science spaces that AI is already becoming stagnant. Brain control interfaces are becoming very much the center of how research is moving forward. So what does it mean then for research spaces that are driven by ideas of innovation? And innovation again in terms of creating capitalist modes of innovative technology. Hi, my name is Ali Akbar Mehta. I'm a transmedia artist, curator, writer and researcher. I'm currently based in Helsinki, and my practice is to create archives that orbit the themes of violence, conflict and trauma. The archives as theoretical research exhibitions take shape through works like video, new media, drawings, paintings, books, performances. At Transmediale 2025, I'm showing my work Purgatory Edit. Purgatory Edit, Liberation Archives for the Cyborgs of Now, is a user-based, montage-driven cinematic experience. At the core of the project are two components. So one is the Doom Scroll Archive. This is one of the representations of the Doom Scroll Archive, which is essentially a media archive that me and my team have worked on to compile and build over the last 2.5 to 3 years. And it's an archive that essentially is representative of the kinds of violence that we are confronted with, both on an everyday basis, but also in the world collectively. And a lot of this material is sourced from existing war archive material, documentary, film, cinema, news, online content, and also home videos from contributors. And this idea of creating actually an archive that deals with representation and the reproduction of violence is very important, because we are confronted with this kind of material on a daily basis, and the kind of media saturated world that we're living in. Through this work that I want to actually highlight how digital technologies generate a certain kind of data fatigue, behavioral manipulation, ideological numbness, so on and so forth. And through that we have categorized this 40,000 clips into 15 different intensity bins. And the performance that we are doing as part of the project, the cyber performance, in it we invite participants to actually engage with the archive by wearing a EEG device and a VR headset, and where their emotions actually create a digital conceptual montage of videos from this archive based on how they respond to it. So basically they feel in terms of how stressful they feel or how relaxed they feel. Are they engaged in it? Are they feeling attentive? Are they feeling excited? Based on these parameters, the software that we have created chooses the next clip. What then happens is that interaction or that dialogue between the participant and the archive creates a montage or a film, so an edit, which is at the end of the performance a kind of a reflection of the participants' relationship or emotional, cognitive, neurological relationship to violence. So which is why the archive is called the Doom Scroll Archive, because it is in a way reflective of the kind of material we possibly could come across while doom scrolling, but also in the sense of how doom scrolling as a phenomena, where the algorithm or the platform has a certain kind of a, by design, it's designed to actually keep you hooked on, that it is by design addictive. So on one hand, we are looking at this kind of material, which is not pleasant, but at the same time we are addicted because of the way that the platform is designed. So that kind of a relationship is also something that this talks about. You could sit for as long as you want, anytime between 5 minutes to 9 hours, because that's the battery length of the device. And so audience actually have sat for hours just looking at these things. So that's also so much indicative of the kind of addictive technologies that we are living with. So doom scroll archives is a response to that as well. So there are two very strong influences because of which we actually designed the project in this way. One is the film Clockwork Orange by Stanley Kubrick in 1961. In Clockwork Orange, the main protagonist, Alex, he's a very violent, delinquent person, and it's a kind of a science fiction film in a classic Kubrick style. Alex is forced to undergo negative aversion therapy. So for me, this idea that somebody can be made to become this model citizen through a kind of a brainwashing or a negative aversion is also kind of a prophecy for the kind of times that we're living in. So the question is, does that make us more sensitive or averse to the idea of violence? There is in the way that we are kind of simultaneously confronted with so many different kind of conflicts, so many different kind of government control, institutional control, violence which is also invisible, structural, culturally normalized, where we don't even think of it as violent anymore. In that environment, how do we behave? What is our tipping point? So that is one of the things that Clockwork Orange is something that I felt was very strongly talking about. The second thing that the project very directly takes on is the idea of the edit, which is also then in the title of the work, Purgatory Edit. So the montage theory by Eisenstein is one of the fundamental theories of filmmaking and technology and of editing, where he talks about the edit or the juxtaposition of clips or visuals as creating a kind of a conceptual foundation, and it's the most important thing in narratology or in filmmaking. So this idea of actually creating a kind of a conceptual narrative by the participants, but where the participants are not in total control of how they're editing it, because it's not a physical action that they're doing, but they are subliminally, subconsciously, through emotions, creating this juxtaposition of or the sequencing of clips, and in a way subconsciously revealing their relationship to violence through this process. That editing process, that Purgatory Edit, is also a very important conceptual influence from Eisenstein's theory. This device actually is used in research, and neuroscientists use it for research in academic and non-academic spaces across the world. But it's a very new space for artists to be experimenting with, and especially in this kind of a context, which has a certain kind of a meaningful engagement in terms of how brain activity actually creates certain kind of effects and resonances and dialogue. I think is also important because through it, it makes the idea or the question of emotions being driving something as techno-driven so much more easier than to understand. So it creates a different relationship to emotions itself. So these kind of technologies open up these kind of possibilities for how to think about very basic, intimate human things. For the last 1.5 to 2 years, we've been hearing so much about AI, and AI platforms have become super huge, but they have also kind of infiltrated our everyday. We are seeing video content being entirely generated in AI. But at the same time, what is happening within a lot of hard science spaces, that AI is already becoming stagnant, and brain control interfaces are becoming very much the center of how research is moving forward. So what does it mean then for, again, research spaces that are driven by ideas of innovation, and innovation again in terms of creating capitalist modes of innovative technology. So already perhaps we wanted to shift the gaze and shift the narrative into non-commercial spaces through artistic methodologies. That okay, this is also a meaningful way of looking at the possible technologies that get developed in the future. I think with Transmediale 2025's theme and their entire direction of thinking about the kind of processes that are simultaneously intimate but at the same time feel, in terms of scale, in terms of distance, in terms of a kind of a universality, they feel also not just oppressive in their presence, but also that they are simultaneous and everywhere. I think that as a fundamental idea is so much at the center of the kind of life and experiences that we are having on an everyday basis. And even with Purgatory Edit, but a lot of other work of mine as well, I'm very interested in, yes, looking at specific stories, to dig deeper into the emotions and the intimacies of each story, because they're each important. But I'm also very much interested in looking at the structure, the larger lens through which we are at the same time diverse and different and plural, but also come together as people. What do we have in common, and what actually differentiate us? So this kind of a simultaneous looking at the intensities or the micro histories, but also looking at the big picture, I think is very much in resonance with Transmediale 2025's theme. We've been told that violence as a phenomena is not quantifiable. It cannot be mapped. There is, and of course, there is a subjectivity where what I feel is violent may not be the same as what you feel is violent, or a particular clip for me to be on a range of 1 to 10, 90% violent, but for you it may be 95% violent, or even for you it might be 80% violent. So these inconsistencies, of course, are there, and we want to work on ways in which we can try and overcome those. But at the same time, it's very exciting that people feel very warm to the idea of participating in these kind of projects and actually becoming open to the idea of witnessing and engaging with material that otherwise feels difficult to engage with. So that has been a fantastic experience. I think that in a lot of my works, on paper, the idea of it seems very large. The idea of archives, and when one talks about 40,000 clips, or one talks about these large number of data, people, I imagine, feel also intimidated by the scale of it. But whenever I've had the opportunity or the privilege of speaking to people who have seen my work, they always leave with something much more intimate, an emotion, a story, a memory, something that is evoked. And that evocation of something intimate in the face of something as large and massive as a 40,000 clip database or archive is also a very interesting way to exchange and interface with the work, and what do then people take away. And archives in themselves are also as knowledge systems, they are passive. They need people to engage in order for them to be relevant. So through exhibition making, through artistic, through this artistic mode of working, I invite people to actually become active participants rather than passive audiences or passive viewers. And this activating the audience, where they become witnesses or co-witnesses to histories and truths of what has happened, I think is very exciting for me. So archiving in the age of power, of data, power and violence, and how can artistic practices affect or create space for social justice is something that I've been very engaged with as an idea and thinking about it. It can, at the very least, show people what is happening, and especially with new media work of this kind, which is relying so much on the kind of violence and conflict and atrocities that not just have been present in the world and in our media vocabulary, but in a way shaped the world. It is also easy to forget the intensity and the scale and the magnitude of what has been happening, and the fact that it's a lot of what that we are confronted with today is not new, but actually has precedence in history, has a historical continuity. Through this idea of witnessing, can then we as witnesses or people who then have the capacity to witness then also become responsible as testifiers to what we have witnessed? Then can we speak about what is happening in the world? Perhaps that is also the intention of my work, but also the intention of work of a lot of artistic work in general, to activate people where they become not just silent audiences but witnesses and then testifiers.